So my name is Sam. I'm the Partnerships and Communications Manager here at Fairygodboss. And if you didn't already know, Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Our platform supports women throughout their careers with free resources like company reviews, job listings, webinars with different experts, virtual recruiting events, and a community where users can be honest about their triumphs and failures either as themselves or anonymously. So before we start, we will be taking questions throughout the webinar. You can ask them using the Q&A feature. It's at the bottom of your screen, and you can ask questions as yourself or anonymously, so feel free to do so whenever something comes up. And this webinar will also be recorded and sent out in a follow-up email, and you can access the recording at any time that you choose. So before we get started, I do want to launch a quick poll, and I will go through Beth and introduce her while you're taking this poll. We're just asking if you're a parent, of a guardian, of a college graduate or a soon-to-be graduate, if you are a student or a recent grad, or if you are just somebody who's looking for a job right now. So I'm going to launch that. Feel free to answer. And while that's going, here with me today is Beth from Next Great Step. She's the founder and president of Next Great Step, and the company's sole focus is to guide students and recent grads to help them achieve career success. Beth has helped hundreds of college students and grads launch their careers. She's been featured in the New York Times, CNBC, Sirius XM Radio, ZipRecruiter, New Jersey Biz, and many other media outlets. Her clients have landed jobs at Amazon, Yelp, JP Morgan, and Major League Baseball, just to name a few. So thank you so much for being here with me today, Beth.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
All righty, I'm going to end the poll really quick so that we can get started. But it looks like we have a lot of parents and just people who are looking for jobs in general. That's really interesting to see.
Okay, great.
So we're going to get started with some questions. We've kind of come up with a few, but again, if you have any come up, please feel free, I'll get to them. So I want to start off, what's just the first step, Beth, that any recent grad or anybody who's looking for a job should take in their job search?
Sure, that's a great question. So one of the first things that college students or recent grads usually try to go do is they go right to the job boards and they see what's online and is there anything for me, or should I just, click apply because it seems so easy. But what I would suggest is don't do that. Don't run to apply online, even though it's really tempting. The first thing that we suggest that young adults trying to get into the job market do is take a self-inventory of your skills. And what I mean is think about what is it that you're really good at? Are you a great writer? Are you good at analyzing things? Are you able to solve problems? Think about all of those skills that you have and experiences you've had, whether it's in the classroom or part-time jobs or clubs, and identify what those are first. And ideally come up with your top three. We say, what are your top three core skills? Those that you're the most competent, most skilled at, and you really enjoy doing. And then once you have some clarity around your skills, then think about, well, what are the companies that I'd really like to work at that could leverage and use those skills? So what are your top 10? Don't go back online. Just think about, you can look for companies. What are those companies or industries that I want to be in? And write those down. And then start to think about, is there somebody who has a job that I would really want? Do I see someone? Do I want to be in digital marketing? Is there someone that I see who has the job that I want? Who is that? You can find LinkedIn is a great place to look for them. You can Google people. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but identify the top 10 companies that you'd like to work at and the top 10 people that you'd be interested in talking to who have the job you want. And then you want to reach out to them and network with them. So I kind of suggest don't run to the job boards. It's hard to find a job that way. Focus on what's good for you and where you see yourself. And then the direct networking is what really leads to greater success. And we can talk more about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm going to throw it to the audience because we already have a question. Sam's asking, another Sam. How many jobs do people apply to on average? I think they're trying to get a sense of how many jobs they should be applying to.
Oh, right. So if your question is, how many should I apply to? Because people think it's a numbers game so that the more is better. And I'm going to tell you it's not. more is not better. So if you apply to 50, 100, I've talked to grads who said, I applied to 200 jobs and I don't understand. Nobody replies. I don't have any interviews and nobody even acknowledges it. So more is not better. So I think just to kind of clarify that, I don't think it's a numbers game. What's a numbers game in terms of how many qualified and quality people are you talking to in the field that you want to go into? And it has nothing to do with what's online. It's how many people are you talking to that are in that field or in that job? Because here's a statistic, 80% of jobs are never posted. I'm going to say that one more time. 80% of jobs are never posted. So there's a whole untapped job market that you will never see when you apply online. And you're only fighting for that 20%. So you want to get to all those people behind that job board that actually have those openings. They just want to know about you. And that's how you really want to focus your time.
That's a great point. I mean, 80%, that's an insane number. And you've talked a lot already about it's who you know, it's kind of not so much what you know. So how important, I mean, it's clear that who you know is important, but if you don't know anybody, what should you do? How can you build your network?
Yeah, absolutely. So many young people say that, or I don't know anybody. How am I going to make a connection? Or my parents are in a different field and they don't have any connections to recommend to me. So I'm all about direct networking, but you can easily make connections to people that you don't know. And one of my favorite ways to do that is through LinkedIn. Everyone should be on LinkedIn. Everyone should have a profile. I don't work for them. It's a great resource. But here's one of the easy ways to connect with people that you don't know and how do you build your connections. I'm hoping most of the attendees, either your parents of a college student or someone who's in college, every university has their own LinkedIn page. Even if you put down on your own profile, whatever school you went to, it'll show your school's icon next to, where you went to school. Click on that. It brings you to that university's page. I'll just use, for example, Penn State University. So if you went to Penn State, click on the icon and it brings up the Penn State LinkedIn page. Then go under, there's a little tab on the left that says alumni. And if you click on it, there's a great way where you can filter what year did someone graduate? Did they have the same major as me? What city are they studying in? What is the job? And you can also look for people who graduated in the last 5 years. So you can create connections. Alumni are super friendly to other fellow alum. It's like an easy way to build your network without technically, you didn't know them beforehand, but now you can. So I think connections are great. I'll offer one other piece too. Families and friends and parents like to make connections for young people. I think that's great, only if they are ready. I hear too many situations where a mom or dad say, well, I don't understand. I introduced my son to the vice president of this bank and nothing happened, or they kind of blew it because they weren't prepared, they weren't ready. So one of the biggest problems with even when you introduce to people who could get you into a job, many candidates are not prepared. It shouldn't be the very first meeting you have. You need to be able to talk about yourself and ask good questions and make sure you've done your research and understand why are you even talking to them. So that's kind of my philosophy on connections. You can easily make it. It's just having a little bit of some techniques to make that happen.
Yeah, I think the alumni network is such a great tip that people forget about all the time. It's like, how many people are currently at your school and how many people went there? Sure, it's thousands upon thousands. So you probably don't know it, but you have an alumni network of thousands of people waiting at your fingertips. So it's really great advice.
Absolutely.
So I want to move on to resumes because we've had another question come in from the audience. So Yvonne is asking, how do we correlate our skills with the company website? So I think kind of in that question is, how do we identify the values that a company is looking for in a candidate, and how do we show that on our resumes?
Sure. That's a great question. So let's say you apply to a job through the company website or online, but you have the job requisites. So one of the first things that I tell candidates to do is go through that application, and you want to highlight the keywords that stand out to you. What are they really looking for under the requirements as well as the qualifications? Are they looking for someone who's creative? Are they looking for someone who has good writing experience? You want to kind of highlight that. Now you need to think about, do my skills and do my experiences align with that? It may not be perfect. That's okay. You know, a lot of times young people are very intimidated. They say, well, I'm not going to apply because I don't have 3 years of experience and I don't have all the things they're asking for. There is no perfect person for these job ads. People write them for people that don't exist sometimes. But I think you should think about, where do I best match that? I don't think you should make things up. If you say you're a good writer, but you've never written an article or a paper, then don't, it's going to be a hard time talking about that just because you think you have good writing skills if you have nothing to prove it. That's kind of going along with your core skills. If you say you have it, you have to have done it. But I think it is important to highlight what they're looking for, and then making sure that you're highlighting where you match and where you align with what they're looking for in a job ad, and then when you get to the interview. Hope that answers that question?
I think that answers the question, Yvonne. Let us know if you want us to clarify more. And I want to follow up with another question about resumes. So should people be including their GPAs on resumes? Is it more important for students to do it? Is there a time limit of, okay, 3 years out of college, quit it? What's kind of the code for that?
Yeah, I get this a lot. So when you're still in college, it is expected that you're going to put your GPA on your resume, because you're going to be hopefully going to career fairs, or you're going to talk to recruiters on campus, and they want to get a sense of your academic standing. The rule of thumb is, if it's over a 3.0, you put it on your resume. If it's below a 3.0, you might want to leave it off. But if you leave it off, the inference is you're below 3.0. So they're going to find that out one way or another. You might want to be able to talk to, well, why is it that way? Maybe you had a difficult semester, or maybe there was a class that was really tough. Maybe you want to talk about your core GPA of your major is, and maybe that's a little bit better. But rule of thumb is, if you're in school, you need to put it on. But once you've graduated, the workplace doesn't care as much about your GPA. And there's a lot of worry about, well, my GPA was this or that. Once you be a year, 2 years out of school, people are more concerned about, what have you done? What have you accomplished? And how can you add value to my business? And they're less concerned with your GPA. So if you're somewhere in the middle, unless it was like really stellar, you can leave it on. But I think, once you're out of school, 6 months to a year, you can take it off.
That's a good rule of thumb there. And then what about your college courses? Because those do show a little bit more about what you've learned rather than how well you did maybe. So is there a time limit with those as well? Same thing, 6 months to a year?
Yeah, I think you have to think about the kind of jobs that you're applying for. If you're going into finance, where they want to see that you've had financial modeling and statistical analysis, that could serve you well for a few years to keep that on your resume, especially if there's been certifications, things like a Series 7 exam or any other type of exam. What I suggest is, you could say relevant coursework. What I don't like to see is when you list out almost every course that you've taken, nobody actually wants to see that. Great. I'm thrilled that you took, a full 4 years or however long it took you to get through college of classes. But how can you just show me and tell me what are the top 4 or 5 classes that are most relevant to what you know and what your skill set is, and to what I might be looking for as an employer in this business.
Got it. So let's move on to cover letters. When it says cover letter optional, is it actually optional?
So cover letters, it's so funny. This is something where so many grads get paralyzed over cover letters. They just can't even, they're like, oh, I have to write a cover letter, so I'm just going to put it off because I don't want to write it. Cover letters is an opportunity to talk about yourself and something that's not in your resume. So if you have the opportunity to write a cover letter, I would write one. It doesn't have to be multiple pages long. It doesn't have to be this extensive. It's a way to show an employer something about you that they're not seeing solely in the resume. Maybe it's about a particular experience, or how you demonstrated certain skills, or it shows that you've done some research on this company and why this company is compelling to you, why it's interesting, and why you think you'd be a good fit. I think that's what we want you to highlight, is what's exciting about this company, why it calls to you, and how you think you could add value to this company. And I would suggest writing it, but keep it in the tone of, why this business and how you can add value there.
Got it. So what are your top tips? You've kind of touched on a few of them, but if you had to come up with 2 or 3 tips for writing your cover letter, what would those be?
Sure. So I'll just say I don't know if it's the number one tip or maybe it's the number one mistake I see. Please do not say, "Dear Mr. Recruiter," or "to whom it may concern." Even though you don't know who the recruiter is and they didn't give you the name and they've kept it behind. LinkedIn and Google are free. Go online and say, who is the head of HR for Apple, Spotify? And there's probably a lot of different layers and people. It doesn't matter. Pick a person. If you could figure out what department they're for, great. If not, pick a real person at a real address and send it to them because they will get it to the right person. When you say "to whom it may concern," it's like, that's just like a robot just kind of sorting you through. So that's my first suggestion, is try to find a real person. The second thing about cover letters is don't start off with, "Hi, my name is so-and-so and I'm applying for this job." They know that. Start with something that's compelling of, Spotify is leading the trends on online music. And as I've been following them throughout my career, I feel that I could add value to your company. And here's why. Like something that pulls the reader in of like, wow, this person's saying something interesting, or this person actually read our latest press release, or they've actually done their homework, or they're sharing why they could help my business be more successful, as opposed to, I am so-and-so and I'm applying for this job. So you want to pull the reader in. And then the last thing is, kind of as I mentioned earlier, how can you help them? Why should they be thinking about you more so than someone else? And a lot of it is about how you can help them as a business be successful. So it's actually not all about you. It's not telling them that you have these amazing talents and you've done all these great things, which is, I'm sure you have. It's because of those things, I'm focused on helping you, Mr. Employer, accomplish these goals. And I welcome the opportunity to talk to you about it. So those are
awesome.
Great kind of pieces of advice on cover letters.
Yeah. Pick a name, draw them in, and demonstrate your value. I love that. I think it's very succinct. It kind of also demonstrates exactly how your cover letter should flow. I think that's really great advice. Yes. Okay. We have a question from Donna in the audience here. Now, Donna, if I don't say this correctly, please send me some clarification on this. But it looks like Donna is interested in getting a job in career services and helping college graduates and college students get jobs. And she's kind of looking for your advice on how to do that. Essentially, how do you get a job trying to help others get a job?
That's a good question. So I think you have to understand what your own credentials are that enable you to be qualified to do that. So in my case, I'm actually not a career coach by trade. I have extensive business experience in the tech sector. And then I was in management consulting, where I was guiding executives on how to differentiate their own businesses, have strategy. And I'm able to bring that to young people. But sometimes there might be a need to, do you have the right certifications to become a career coach? And I think just like the way you're looking for any job, start talking to people who run career coaching companies, talk to universities who are always looking for good talent to help their student base, or whatever, profile that you're looking for. Is start talking to people who are doing the job that you want, so you can learn more about what it takes to get there, what it looks like, and maybe that'll help you with some inroads to getting into that type of organization.
Perfect. Follow-up question from Yvonne here. She's asking for templates of cover letters. Now I'll step in. Yvonne, I know we have a few on Fairygodboss, so I will include those in the follow-up email so you can access them. Beth, I'm not sure if you have any of your own that you want to share with the audience.
I do. I mean, I do have templates. We typically reserve those for our clients on helping them to support them in their job efforts. But maybe I could take a look and see if there's something that we can share. But typically we do have templates, but it's, again, even the answer is there is no exact template. Even our templates are guidance of, this is what you should say in the first paragraph. Maybe you should think about this in the second, but it's not the word for word fill in the blank. I think everyone wants that, even with, can you just tell me what to write? You have to think about your own skills and the value you can add, and you have to think about the company that you're applying to. It cannot be the same cover letter for every single application.
That's a really great point. So Yvonne, I'll also include Beth's contact info so you can reach out directly if you have any additional questions, and I'll find some templates on our site so you can kind of look there. But I mean, what Beth said, I think is very true in that you can't send out the same cover letter to every single company. You do have to kind of tailor it to reflect how you're going to be best fit for that specific company. And I'm sure that's going to change with every single company that you apply for. Donna just wanted to say thank you as well for the great advice. She appreciates it a lot. You're welcome, Donna, and I'm sure Beth feels the same way. Marla asks, I'm a career coach at a university. Any specific tips for those that wait until the last minute to start their job search and don't have internship experience? Yikes.
Yeah, this has come up. It was funny. I recently, someone asked the same question that for different reasons, students are not able to do an internship over the summer. Could be taking extra credit, could be they need to work, they need to make money. It depends what it is. I don't think that can hurt them. I think they just have to think about what have you done? And it can be, an organization that you're a part of on campus. Were you part of, were you writing for the school newspaper? Were you part of the photography club? Something that can show that understanding what skills do you have? I'm going to come back to that same thing. What have you done? And it could be even what's some group work that you did for a project and a class. So classwork is an absolutely appropriate thing to talk about coming out of school. Sometimes because of the competitive nature of this, where we are, people think they have to have these amazing internships and these perfect jobs. And that's just not always realistic. I think you need to think about what have you done yourself, even if it's, I worked at a waiter as a restaurant, but maybe I was able to increase the bill by upselling, more drinks or more dessert, that I know how to do sales and increase the revenue by 20%. So I think you can even take the things that you think are not that important, and as long as you're able to talk about them and see what you're able to do there, that becomes some of your examples of how you talk about what you've done. Or if you had a really nice babysitting business, or you were a camp counselor, or all the things that young people do. It doesn't have to be this perfect thing. In terms of, hey, if I waited to the last possible minute and I haven't done anything yet, my philosophy is like earlier is better than later, but it's never too late. It's never too late to start. You just have to really focus in on it and be persistent and persevere to keep at it. It's looking for a job is a full-time job.
That's a very good point. So who should students ask for to be their references? Who should they be looking to for that?
Sure. So students should think about who are the people in their lives that know them well and that they've had good experience besides mom or dad or sibling or, grandparent. Who have they interacted with? This could be a great person to ask for a reference as a professor, which I always encourage students from very early on, get to know your professor. It's so valuable for them to know you. By the way, professors know where the internships are, and it can help you in class as well. But professors are a great resource. Was there any kind of supervisor that oversaw a club that you were a part of? Even if you had a part-time job, who was the manager of the restaurant, or someone who ran the camp that you might have been a counselor at? Or maybe there's someone you just sought out advice as a mentor. So I think there's lots of people that you can think about as resource. Could be a family friend who's just, gotten to know you, someone who can speak to your abilities. So if an employer calls them and says, oh, I understand you're a reference for this person, tell me about them, they have to be able to do that. So that's what you just have to look for in a reference.
Is one reference better than another, or as a student, are they all kind of the same? Like, is a professor better than maybe somebody from an outside organization or a club, or is there no difference?
I don't think necessarily better. It's a matter of how well someone can speak to your abilities and that just someone really knows you versus, I met them once. I think that's more important, that somebody actually knows you and what you're capable of versus a passing, person that you barely met.
I think that's an important thing for students to note, especially because a lot of them will look at, oh, well, this person has a way higher title, but I only worked with them twice, versus I know this person, I've worked with them every day, but their title's a little bit, less senior. But really going for the person who can speak to what you do, I think is
absolutely
really important. Okay, so getting back to kind of this network idea, we've talked about networking a lot. If now you're applying for a job and you know somebody who works at the company where you want to work, how should you go about asking them for advice or to forward your resume or, put in a good word for you?
Yeah. So networking with people to get a job is probably the best way to actually push yourself forward. That's what we highly, highly recommend. But a lot of college students and grads say, well, what am I saying to this person? If I call them up or I found a fellow alumni and they're doing something, but I don't know, what am I actually saying? So we actually have this technique that we teach students. We were actually written in the New York Times about it. It's called the 3 A's. So if you meet with somebody, you should always have a plan of what do you want from the meeting, because you asked for it. It could really get you to the next level, but you have to have some preparation. And here's what very briefly the 3 A's are. The first A is you want to think about, if everything went fantastic in this interaction, what action do I want that person to do? It's not that they like you more. It's what will they do? They will refer you. They will introduce you to someone. They will recommend you, something that they have to actually take some time out of their day after you meet. So thinking about what's the end goal? What do I want them to do if this goes great? The second A is what I call attitudes. So this person maybe never met you before. They heard you through a friend. What attitudes do you want them to have about you? What do you want them to believe about you that they don't know right now? Maybe they don't know that you're a great writer. Maybe they don't know that you're great at statistical analysis. You have to make sure that during that conversation, you're explaining your core skills, that they come away with the belief of like, wow, this person can do something and I didn't realize how good they are at it. And the last thing you think about is, what are the answers that I need? Because this is a two-way street. This is also a chance for a candidate to evaluate, do I like what they have to say? Do I want to work here? Does it seem like a good culture? So it's a great way for, as a candidate, to think about, what questions do I need answers to? And we always encourage you to think about bigger questions like, tell me how you measure success in this role, or what are some of the bigger challenges that you face, or what kind of criteria do you look for when you're hiring? And when you plan out with those 3 A's of, what are the actions, attitudes, and answers that you need, you tend to have a lot more successful interactions. And there's a game plan of where it goes from there, as opposed to someone saying, thanks for coming, great talking to you, and you never hear back. This is a good way to kind of not only maintain the relationship, but also to get yourself pushed further into the organization to get a job.
I think that's a great point of that last A that you just said about how you're also finding out if you even want to work there. I think that's something people forget so often, is that, when you go into an interview or a conversation like this, they're not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them just as much. You need to find out if that's the right fit. I think that's a great point. It's something a lot of people may lose sight of. All right. So since we have a few parents on the line here, what can parents do? And we also have people who want to be working career services and help students. So as parents or as guidance counselors or things like that, how can they help their students during and after college to get a job?
Sure. So one of the things that parents tell me, especially when they have grads a few years out and their grads still looking for help, we talk about the comment of, I wish I only knew. And one of the things parents say, I wish I knew how early the process actually starts. And I wish I would have encouraged my student to take advantage of resources earlier, or do a few small things to help themselves in the job search earlier in college. So the number one thing is encourage, if your student is still in college, to maximize the resources they have on campus. Go to career services, whether you think it's helpful or not, or whether they have time. A lot of times students will make assumptions about things, but they never really went. Or I can't tell you the number of students who say, I know there's a career fair, but yeah, I didn't go because it just seemed kind of overwhelming and I don't know what I would say, so I just never went. As I tell parents and their students, this is the only time in your entire life that employers come looking for you on campus. It's it. And then once you leave school, it's all on you to go find them. So you got to maximize the resources on campus when you have them. The other thing I would tell parents is to encourage and help them to figure out what are these skills. Sometimes it's hard for young people to understand, well, I'm not sure what I'm good at. I don't know what I want to do, and help them to kind of talk it out and make sure that they know how to talk about themselves. Do they have like a clear pitch? And when someone says, tell me about yourself, what are you going to say? As I said earlier, I think it's great when parents make introductions, but it's when your student is ready. And you need to make sure as a parent that you've talked it out with them. Like, so pretend I'm the vice president. Tell me, what are you going to say to me? And you need to make sure that they're prepared. The more you can do some role playing and practice. I know it's hard. This is a tough age. I have a son who's a junior in college, so they don't always want to hear from their parents. I absolutely understand that. But the more you can give them some guidance to try to think through some of this earlier is better, and make the introductions as long as they're ready, but encourage them to use resources, get their resume done early, get on LinkedIn. These are things that you can do as a freshman and sophomore just to get the foundation going, and then go from there.
So you mentioned career fairs and that a lot of people, maybe hesitate to going to them. So clearly, I think that you think they're very worth your time. Could you explain a little bit more about that, and maybe how students can best prepare to go to a career fair, what things they should have kind of on hand?
Sure. Yeah, this is a subject where so many students will say, I didn't go, or a very common statement is, I went and there were hundreds and hundreds of students lined up at all these different employers, and I was so overwhelmed that I just turned around and walked out. So I get that a lot, and I understand it's a lot. If you've never been and it's your first time attending, I can understand. So one of the important things is just the preparation. And if you do some simple things to prepare, it makes the process easier. You have to have a strategy. You can't just go in and say, well, let me just see who's there. Because when the company that you want has like 50 people in line to go talk to them, you're going to be like, well, forget it. I'm not going to do that. So a couple things they can do to feel better about going to career fairs. Number one is, like a few weeks before, a month before would be great. Go on your career services website and see who is coming. It's already predetermined. So even if you want to see who's coming in the spring or in the fall, go online and see who's coming. Pick your top 7 to 10 companies that you'd want to talk to. You're not going to see 20 or 30. There's just not enough time. But pick the ones that are the most interesting to you, who have jobs. Perfect. Then you're going to do a little research. Doesn't have to be extensive. You want to look up, what's the latest press release? How is the company doing? And what division in that company would I want to work for? So you have you're going to have notes. You're going to have a portfolio. You're going to write this down. We actually, and I can link it after, we do have a free guide on how to ace the career fair, a template for that. And then you want to think about, what's your elevator pitch? What are you going to say about yourself? When you say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I'm about. I'm a junior, I'm studying engineering, and I'm looking to get into this field because of this, or something, having a really concise story. And you'd be surprised. People are receptive when you're prepared, when you have a little bit of information ready to talk about what you've learned about the company. And then you want to always get that person's business card so you can follow up. One of the most important things about career fairs is the follow-up. So many students don't send a thank you note. And I can't tell you, I have a colleague of mine who is a recruiter for a Big 4 consulting firm. And he said, I might have 100 students that I take their resume. It's like maybe only 15 send me a thank you note. And that's the only 15 that I push through the next level. So you could have a great GPA and a great resume, and if you don't write the thank you note, they don't want to talk to you anymore. So that's such a simple thing to follow through. So those are just a few tips. Needs a little planning. And you got to be professionally dressed. Don't show up on your way to the gym, or that's happened too.
Oh,
but
boy.
Just practice. And the more you do it, then year after year, it's easier.
Somebody had a question about career fairs from the audience. How do I find a career fair if I attend a small school that doesn't offer one? Where should I look for one?
Good question. So one of the best things to do is to look obviously locally in the area. So sometimes there's just career fairs that are open to everyone, not just students or recent grads. So it depends geographically where you are. They happen all the time in major cities. So it doesn't have to be just something geared toward undergrad students, but I would look for, in your city, go to Google, career fair in the local Boston area or wherever it might be and see what comes up. And that's a good way just to see what's coming. Sometimes there's also very industry specific career fairs, which might be great as well. So if you're in a very specific area, then you can go something that's more targeted that way.
Donna wanted to just send a recommendation. She says Career Eco is a great site for virtual job fairs. There you go.
Okay.
And I know, just a little plug here on Fairygodboss, we occasionally do virtual career fairs as well. We're actually hosting one for recent tech grads. Registration is currently cut off, but that's tomorrow, but stay on the lookout. So we specifically host virtual recruiting events sometimes for people with 0 years of experience. So stay on the lookout for anything virtual like that. I'm not sure how many organizations offer them, but it's a really great way to do it, literally to do a career fair from your couch, which who doesn't love that? Looks like another question from the audience asking about soft skills. So what are the soft skills that are employers looking for, and how do I show those on my resume? Good question.
Very good question about soft skills, because normally we're focused on the hard skills. What is it, that hard skill that that you can, do Excel or analysis? What I suggest is that you should always still talk about your hard skills first, with like the soft skills complementing it. So for example, if you say, I'm a really good problem solver, and I had a situation where I worked in a team, and as part of my way of solving the problem, I was able to really be a good listener and understand what everyone's priorities were, and my ability to communicate and be empathetic. So, those are just some other soft skills that you could share, but inside your stories. And I think it's better, to highlight your soft skills in an actual interview than on your resume. I would really try to focus more on what you accomplished. So putting metrics to your accomplishments and really focusing on the hard skills from a resume standpoint. But when you get the chance to interview over the phone, in person, over video, you talk about how you have the soft skills supporting it, that you're very responsible, timely, all those types of words. The challenge is, if you solely focus on soft skills, it doesn't really differentiate yourself. Everyone will say, I'm hardworking. Everyone says I'm hardworking. So the next 20
Team
people
player.
interviewing. So if you all said you're hardworking, now you're all the same. What else do you have besides working hard that I need? Oh, I need somebody who can be an effective writer. Oh, the fact that you're a good writer and you're hardworking, that makes me more interested in you versus just saying that. So try not to solely rely on soft skills as your only thing that you talk about.
Great. So just a quick note to the audience. I have a few more questions. It seems like we've gotten through most of your questions. So if you have any more, please submit them now so we can get to them before we end things here. But a really great question is, why should job seekers consider a career coach? Why can't they just do it alone?
So there's lots of reasons to think about it. One of the things, and I'll speak to parents first, a lot of times I'll say young adults at this age like to try to forge their own path. And I totally think that's great. But sometimes there's a point where there's also tends to be some conflict between parents and offering advice. And I will also speak for myself as someone with a college age student. Sometimes there's just so much tension, or mom and dad thinks it should be done one way and your student thinks it should be done another way. And sometimes it's nice to have an outside party who could kind of calm that both sides and share as a moderator, but also giving some real expert advice. Mm-hmm. But candidly, a young grad has to feel that they've exhausted all their options. They have to want it. And that's the number one thing too, is no matter how much, myself or anyone in the field or a mom or dad or a mentor thinks that you need a career coach, until the candidate themselves say, you know what, I've already applied to a lot of jobs. I've had interviews that didn't go well. I don't hear back, or I'm worried, or I'm stressed before I go in. You have to come to that realization yourself. And if you do, just to know that there's resources. And I think, someone like us here at Next Great Step could be a valuable resource. We have a really high success rate. Over 95% of our clients get hired after working with us. And we're not recruiters, but we teach you the secrets of what an employer expects of you. And I think that's why career coaching can be valuable, especially at this age. It's not taught a lot in school. So it's a skill that sometimes you just need to acquire to get the job you want.
Yeah, and just a reminder to everybody, we will be including Beth's information in an email, so you can definitely reach out to her if you're interested in learning more. So it looks like we've answered all of our audience questions, and I think you've answered all of mine, but we promised the audience that we would tell them the 5 secrets to landing a job out of college. So I think if you could just run through a quick recap so we can all keep that top of mind.
Sure, absolutely. So just a quick recap, we kind of talked about them in different ways of the 5 tips to landing a job. So the first one is get focused, really start to narrow in on what is it that I think I want to do and what excites me, what do I want to learn more about. Leading into that, the second thing about getting a job is understanding what are my core skills. What are those top 3 things that I am the best at, most competent, and I enjoy doing? And I have real experience where I can demonstrate that skill. So that's so important to helping you talk about yourself, as well as really, complementing getting focused on a company that leverages those skills. The other thing you want to think about is, what do I do with it? And that direct networking, really reaching out to people directly and forging those relationships with people who are in the job that you want. It doesn't have to be the executive or the vice president, but talking to people who are doing the job that you want in the companies that are interesting to you, that is what will be most valuable. And the easiest way to do that is with alumni and using the LinkedIn alumni tool or your school's portal to connect with people who are in the job. The fourth thing that people should think about is you have to do your homework. You got to do some preparation. There's so much out there. You got to do some research of, show me this company in the news or latest press releases, or what's their stock price, or what's going on in certain divisions of those companies and why you want to work there. I can guarantee you every employer will ask you, why do you want to work for us? So you need to be ready to answer that question. And it's not a cookie cutter question or the answer for the same answer for every company. You got to look it up. And the last thing is you just need to persist and persevere. We are in such an age of instant gratification. Everyone expects that, oh, well, that person looks like they got a great job and it happened right away. That's not true. It takes time. It takes effort. And even it might look like everybody else has it together, they don't, or it took a lot of work and a lot of effort to get there. So you got to persist and persevere. One phone call, one meeting, one social media post is not what it takes to get hired. You have to keep doing it day in and day out. And the more you persist, the more it will happen.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Beth, and thank you everybody for tuning in today. As I said, you'll get a recording of this later today, and we'll include some cover letter templates and Beth's information. And I wish you all the best of luck with your job searches. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.